Welcome to Handmade with Holly. My name is Holly Michelson. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Delmar, New York, just outside of Albany. I'm really excited to bring you these fun slider cards today. I have some great examples already here to show you. And in today's video, we're gonna make two more of them. We're gonna make one that slides out to the right, and we're gonna make one that slides to the left. And I'll show you the difference between those. This is actually part one in my video series on slider cards. I'll be doing an additional video to show you how to make slider cards that go up and down, bring you lots of other stamp sets that might be really fun to use for slider cards. So you'll want to check out my part two in the video series to see all those other stamp sets and to learn how to make a vertical slider. And also, I think I'm going to have a part three in this series, and that I'm going to bring in some paper pumpkin. Really, I'm only breaking it up because I have so much content for you today that it would make the length of the video just too long. For those of you who are not yet subscribed to my channel, I invite you to please subscribe. It's free to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and all you need to do is to click on the red word subscribe. If that word says subscribed and it's not red, then you know you're already subscribed to my channel. You'll want to be sure to click on the notifications bell. That way YouTube will notify you each time I upload a new video. That's going to be especially important since this is a three-part series and we want to make sure that you get to see the second and third video in the series for lots more great ideas featuring other stamp sets as well as paper pumpkin. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how these slider cards work, but basically you pull on the ribbon and it pulls out the inside of the card and your element on the front moves. We've got our little yellow Corvette. Here we have a brown Volkswagen van. This looks exactly like the van my father had when I was growing up. I love looking at that card. It makes me think of him. He passed away about 16 years ago. I miss him dearly. In fact, that's why I had to make the convertible yellow. My father, just out of high school, had a yellow convertible. So I just love looking at that yellow convertible and thinking of him. And then we've got a Just Jade buggy here. And you'll notice that this one, the car is driving to the left. And that's why we're going to make two cards in our video today. One to show you how to make the cars drive to the right, and one to show you the cars driving to the left. Okay? The card that I'm going to feature today on the video is going to feature the On the Horizon bundle. So we'll be using Designer Series paper from the New Horizons Designer Series paper pack. And we'll also be using the stamps and dies in this bundle, in addition, of course, to one of the cute cars in the Driving By stamp set. Now, if you haven't already gotten this Driving By stamp set, I just want to remind you that this stamp set is free during Saleabration, which ends on February 28th or while supplies last. So you want to be sure that you pick up this cute stamp set before it's unavailable. And we'll also be featuring these On the Horizon products. These are in the current January through June catalog, and they are not retiring anytime soon. As of today, February 20th, the day that I'm filming this video, the dies are currently unorderable. They will be back in on March 7th. So if you are interested in making these cards, you'll need to wait a few weeks before you can purchase the dies if you don't have them already. But the stamps and the paper are available for purchase today. I have to show you this stunning paper from the New Horizons Designer Series paper. Look at how magnificent this paper is. It was all hand watercolored by an artist at Stampin' Up and then photographed to become our Designer Series paper. Oh my God, can you just believe this one? I just can't believe this one. Actually, I really love this. Oh my God, I love them all. And if you flip them over, they also have gorgeous reverse sides. So in some cases, there's some scenes on the back, a lot of water. There's another scene, a lot of watercolor washes. Really, really fun designs. Whoops, I got that one in there twice. Really, really fun designs and just some gorgeous paper. I have to say that this is the kind of paper that when it's so awesome, I have trouble cutting it. And when that happens, I just have to buy 2 packs. One that I can play with and one that I can look at. So, yep, I have 2 packs of that paper, and I needed to do that or I would not have been able to do this class today. We're going to need a card base. This is a half sheet of Evening Evergreen, so it's 8.5 by 5.5, and we're going to use that as our card base. I've selected this design from the New Horizons Designer Series paper to use as our backdrop for our little van. I stamped and fussy cut the van. This is just stamped on basic white, and then I colored it in with my blends, just saving us some time since we're making 2 cards today. And I fussy cut it using my trusty snips. We're going to need an interior piece. This is going to be the piece that's going to slide out. We'll need this piece to be 5 inches by 3 3/4. All piece of basic white. This is what we're going to attach the van to so it can slide. This measures 2.5 by 1/2 inch. And then we're going to need various embellishments, however you want to decorate your card. Part of that will be dictated by which sheet you select or what products you use for your slider. I'm not exactly sure what scene I'm going to make, but I made myself a couple of mountains from Blackberry Bliss, some trees from Evening Evergreen, and then I used... so let's take a look here. We have this die. I used this die. I snipped off the edge of that, partly because the piece of paper that I had handy wasn't long enough, and partly because I might use both mountains, and then this could be kind of long for me. This could be like a lake, or grass or ground in one of your scenes, but I'm going to use it today to make my sentiment label. Now, we'll start by cutting down our Designer Series paper. I left it full size so that you could see it. I'm going to bring in my trimmer here. And again, I want a piece of Designer Series paper that is 5 1/4 wide. Since this is a horizontal orientation card, I'm going to want my Designer Series paper to be 5 1/4 wide and 3 3/4 tall. So I'm going to start by cutting this at 5 1/4. And I'm going to save this scrap for another project. This green might come in really handy to cut some grass, or who knows what I'll do with that, but I'm going to save it. And then, because I want to make sure I get more of the ground to ground my van, I'm going to orient my paper in this direction so that I'm cutting off part of the sky. And we want this to be 3 3/4 high. So if I do that, I'll still get some sky, but most of my paper will be focused on the land to really ground that van. And this is too gorgeous to toss. Definitely going to save that for something else. We're also going to need to score our card base. So I'm going to take the cutting blade out of the way, and I'm going to be using the scoring blade this time. And we're going to score at 1/2 inch. And don't worry about the measurements. I will provide a downloadable file for you after the video. And in that download, I'll give you the dimensions, but I'll also list what products I used for this card and for the samples that I showed you in the beginning. Okay? So we're going to go ahead and score this at 1/2 inch. I like to run that a few times and get a really nice deep score. And we're also going to slide it over and score it again at 4 1/2. There we go. Can you see those two score lines at 1/2 and 4 1/2? I'm gonna bring in my bone folder and I'm going to burnish both of those score lines so that I get a nice smooth edge. And so this is our card base. Now, I typically like to hold my cards so that this inside tab, this is what's going to seal the card shut, so that my inside tab is facing backwards. So this is going to become the front of my card base. Or more accurately, I'm going to rotate it since this is a horizontal card. There's the tab, and that's how it's going to fold. What I'm going to do is I'm going to layer my designer series paper on top to make my scene. So we're going to go ahead and use some Stampin' Seal to attach that down. And now I'm going to visually align this to make sure that I have about an equal border on all 4 sides. That looks pretty good to me. And I'm going to attach that down. Okay? Now, for this next part, I'd like to know where the center is. I'm going to use my grid paper as a ruler. And I'm going to take the leading edge here, that 1/2 inch that's going to fold under, and push that aside. So you can see it measures 4 inches. And I'm going to find the halfway point, which is 2 inches, and I'm just going to make a little tick mark there. I have a pencil. Honestly, you could use a pen because we're going to cut it off. Now, in order to trim that off, we need either the smallest die in the layering circles die set, or we're going to need a small circle punch. Now, the circle punches are retired. I have the 1 1/4 inch retired punch. I could use that. The 1 1/4 inch makes a little bit bigger arc than is my preference, but it does work. I used it on some of them. Or I could bring in a 1 inch circle punch. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put that so that my little pencil line is in the center. And I'm going to give that a punch, making this finger notch. And so we see this right here, right? We have our finger notch. And now I'm going to repeat that process, lifting up the front and sliding my punch inside and lining it up with my first notch. Okay, can you see that? I'm just sort of sliding it in and lining it up with my first notch. And then I'm going to punch again. And I know it probably seems counterintuitive to do those separately, that if I do them all at one time, I can make sure that they're exactly in the same spot. However, punches are probably not too excited to go through 3 layers of paper, the designer series paper and 2 layers of this heavy cardstock. So just to be safe, I did them separately to protect my punch. We're also going to bring in our tear and tape. If you don't think you have tear and tape, if you happen to be a Paper Pumpkin subscriber, the Gifts Galore Paper Pumpkin from November of 2021 actually had this tear and tape in it. I'm going to use my tear and tape and I'm going to run this along this tab. This is what's going to adhere the card together. I'm going to run it along the tab and then just tear it just like that with my fingers. That's why they call it tear and tape. And then I'm going to give it a good burnish with my finger to press it down to the card stack. Now, that having been said, if you don't have tear and tape, if you haven't purchased it yet, if you don't have the November 2021 Gifts Galore Paper Pumpkin, you could also bring in Stampin' Seal Plus. This is the blue one with the plus sign on it. This is a really heavy duty adhesive. This would be a good alternative to the tear and tape. We need to cut our slider slit. So if we look here at this card, you'll see there's a cut in the card for where the vehicle is going to slide. We need to make that cut. So let's bring in our trimmer again. This time we're going to need the cutting blade. Okay, so you have to decide where it is that you want your van to slide. Be about right there. And keeping in mind that you're going to be attaching a dimensional probably around the center of the van. So if we take a look at that place for me to make my slit, so And I've done most of my cards, not all of them, but most of my cards where I'm making that slit at 1 3/4 inches. So I've lined up the card base, including this tab at the 1 3/4 inches. And I'm going to bring up my cutting blade and I'm going to cut between the 1 and the 4.5 inch marks. So I'm literally just going to line this up with the 1. There's a 1 right here on my ruler, and the 4.5 is down here. And I'm just going to run the slit down to the 4.5, and that's what's going to give me some movement on the card. And then maybe just run it back and make sure you've got a clean cut and lift it up and take it out. Okay, so do you see that there? It's cut not only through the designer series paper, but also through the cardstock. And we're going to bring in that little piece that I mentioned. This is the 1/2 by 2.5 inch piece, and we're just going to slide it, insert it into there, okay? I'm going to take a Stampin' Dimensional, and I'm going to place it on my little slider piece. So this is just going to slide back and forth like that. That's how our car moves. And this little dimensional is also going to stop this from going in too far for me if it happens to move it all on me while I'm working on the inside. Now, in advance, I stamped a sentiment on my inside piece. So again, we've got this white piece that slides out. That's what this piece is. You want to make sure that whatever sentiment you're stamping is really kind of over to the right, but not so close to the edge, because remember, it's going to be peeking out. You don't want your sentiment to end up in this notch area where it's visible before you've pulled the card, but as the card comes out, you want the sentiment to be visible. So think about where you're stamping that. You're really going to be over in kind of maybe less than half, like not, you don't even want to be over to the halfway point of the card, but keep it about a 1/2 inch away from the edge of your card. So I'm going to kind of straighten that out, and when I open it up, we can see the rest of that here. My goal is to attach this card to this piece of white. Now, so when I do that, we're going to have it upside down there so that our sentiment's facing in the correct direction. But we need adhesive on this as well to attach our card to this little tab. So I'm going to bring back in the tear and tape. Again, if you don't have tear and tape, you can use the Stampin' Seal. And I'm just going to tear off a small piece that fits onto this tab and give it a good finger burnish to make sure that's attached down. Now let's go ahead and use your take your pick tool to lift the paper off of that. Get it straight. And then kind of eyeball where this card is going to be. You want it close to the right edge so that it's visible when the card is not yet in motion, so they see there's something there. And you also want to center it left and right, or top and bottom in this case since it's horizontal. Now I'm just going to give that a press and make sure that my white cardstock is adhered to that tab. And then we're going to go ahead and close the card up. Now to close the card, again, need to take your pick tool to get that paper off and expose the adhesive. This is really tacky. And we're going to tuck this in. You want to make sure that this white piece is inside the pocket. You don't want it to come over here and stick to the adhesive. You want to make sure that's inside it. And then we're going to bring the back down and let the two kind of kiss and give them a press, okay? So now you want to check that your slider is working. This one's working great. So you can see that we're going to want to pull on the ribbon to remove this piece of the card. So we're going to need to punch a hole to put the ribbon in. Use something like the trio punch to cut the ribbon. I found it was a little easier to have a freestanding single punch so that I could better line it up with the notch. So I'm using this non-Stampin' Up one that I've had for many years, but that just gave me a little bit better control over where I made my ribbon notch. Now, what I like to do over something like this ribbon notch is I like to add some protection. And my goal is to make sure that as people keep tugging on that ribbon and playing with the card, that the ribbon doesn't rip the card. This is a narrow space and it could rip. So my solution to that was to bring in a die from the tailored tags. So this is a die set for making tags, and so Stampin' Up! Gave us this reinforcement die. And when you use this, it makes these little pieces that you can put over the hole to give them reinforcement so that your ribbon doesn't rip the tag. So even though I didn't use the tailored tags to make any tags for this, I wanted to use my ribbon reinforcements anyway. So I'm just going to put some adhesive. You kind of have to work around the hole. And then I'm just going to do that again. Notice I'm doing this on my silicone mat. That way all the extra adhesive kind of sticks to the silicone mat instead of my work surface. And if you have a little bit of excess glue there in the center hole, I kind of just take my Take Your Pick tool, run it in there, and then use my fingers to grab that adhesive off my Take Your Pick tool. And I'm going to turn that over and attach that on the back. So now I have strong reinforcements there. Now let's build a scene. So if my van is going to be about here, then I'm probably going to want to put my mountains. Actually, that's perfect. Maybe just the mountains and the trees. Just going to put some more Stampin' Seal on the back here of my mountains and also my trees. Again, using the silicone craft mat. These little trees are kind of small, so I'm able to get extra adhesive on there and have it just stick to my mat. Little bits of extra adhesive. I'm just going to play with that. I don't want any of that to show. Pull that off. Kind of get that webbing off. So I won't need this. And I'm just going to peel off the protective backing on my dimensional and attach my van. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that there's no extra white peeking out beneath whatever object you're attaching. If there is, come in with your snips and snip off any excess beneath the dimensional. That happened to me on the Corvette. The Corvette is, or the little convertible, is smaller, so it was peeking out a little bit and I just trimmed it off. Now we're going to add our sentiment up here. If your Stampin' Seal doesn't start right away, you can just roll it on your silicone mat to get it going. And I think I'm going to place this just like that. Oh goodness, this is so cute. I really didn't know how it was going to turn out. I hadn't made it in advance. I just prepped some pieces and I thought I would be surprised right along with you. So we do need to add our ribbon, and this ribbon's kind of thick. This is some retired Blackberry Bliss ribbon. I wished I had some evening evergreen, but if you could see all the ribbon I have over here, I did not purchase the evening evergreen yet. So I went with this retired Blackberry Bliss. I'm just going to pull it gently to get it started. Sometimes you need to pull one side and then the other, like the left tail and then the right, to kind of get it through. Make a little loop knot here. So I'm pulling a little bit on one side and then a little bit on the other. And I have about a 5-inch piece of ribbon here. I cut that in advance. Sorry, I didn't mention that was about a 5-inch piece of ribbon. And I'm just going to pull that to get it tight. And then I can go ahead and sort of snip off my ends. Driving by just to say, relax and enjoy your day. Now, just a note about this sentiment here. I actually used this, Driving By Just to Say. And what I did was I put the stamp on my black, and then I took my Blackberry Bliss Stampin' Write marker and I colored the Driving By, stamped that, cleaned my stamp, and then I colored the Just to Say, and then I stamped it again. Deliberately made sure not to get any ink on the word hi. I wanted to say, driving by just to say, relax and enjoy your day. So the relax and enjoy your day came here from the On the Horizon set, and I loved how it rhymed. Driving by just to say, relax and enjoy your day. I thought that was so fun. I hope you enjoy it too. Okay, so we're gonna make another one. This time we're gonna make one with the bug so that it goes in the left direction. And so again, I have my card base. I have some designer series paper and cardstock to make my scene. And I also have the piece for that inserts for the inside and pulls out. All the dimensions are the same, with the exception that in this case, I cut the designer series paper shorter since I had the road. I left myself enough room to overlap. I'll put those dimensions in the download, of course. Let's go ahead and prepare our card base. We're gonna need to score first. Same 8.5 by 5.5, and we're going to score again at the 1/2 inch. So regardless of whether it's left or right, the scoring is the same. And again, we'll score at 4.5, okay? And so let's go ahead and finger fold, and then we'll burnish with the bone folder. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach my paper. This cloudy pattern came from the Sunshine and Rainbows Designer Series paper. Again, giving yourself about an equal amount of room on all sides. Put that down. This is just basic black cardstock. And then I took my ruler and a white gel pen, and I just hand drew those dotted lines to make it look like a road. And I'm going to put this down so that it overlaps the designer series paper so we don't see any gap there. And then just make sure that I align it with the left edge and the right edge there, okay? This time, instead of making the notch over here, I'm going to make the notch over here. Now, let's think about that. If we want to find the 2-inch mark, we're going to measure from our center seam over to our tab. We're trying to find the 2-inch mark on that panel. Make a quick mark there and come in with my punch and punch out my notch. You might even get a little bit of the road in that punch. That's okay. And then again, I'm going to sneak my punch in behind, line it up again, and punch the back panel. So I have to decide where I'm going to make my slit, and while I typically make them at 1 3/4, I need to see if that's going to be the right place for my little car to be riding correctly on the road. So if I come to the 1 3/4 mark and I look at the slit's going to be right there, if I were to place my car on that, it's just a little lower than I want it to be. So I'm going to slide over 2 notches, and instead I'm going to make my slit at 1 7/8 instead of making it at 1 3/4. I'm going to adjust it ever so slightly so that my car is where I want it to be, okay? And again, we have to think about where we're going to make the slit. So last time we did it from 1 to 4.5. but we have to see how that would be this time. And you see the 1 inch mark with the notch on this side is going to be really close to that notch. Instead of being 1 to 4.5, we're going to go 1.5 to 5. Does that make sense? We're shifting it a little bit so that our car is where we want our car to be. Okay? So 1.5 to 5. So you can see I've got my slit there. Can you see that slit there? Okay. Hide our little piece in here. Put our dimensional on it. Oh, actually, we're going to slide our piece to this side because the card is going to start in this position and then move to this position, right? So very important. We're reversing where this little notch is going to be. Do you see that? That is not going to work for this card. So this is going to pull out in this direction. That would be upside down. So again, why we're doing this in both directions, make sure we know all the things that need to be reversed. We're going to toss that aside. I mentioned the fact that you want to have your stamps about 1/2 inch away from the edge so that they're not visible when the card is closed. But they also need to be over in the edge that's going to pull out so they're exposed. So if we look in this stamp set, I would probably eliminate this sentiment, and this sentiment. This one might work, but these two are probably so long that they might not all get fully exposed as the card opens. So you want to make sure that you're picking a sentiment that you think will fit in the visible space that we have, right? So we've got about that much space. I'm going to use Pool Party ink to match my designer series paper. Paper up with the grid lines so I get a good straight impression. You saw one of them was not that straight. This one was not that straight. So I did better this time. Yay me. I forgot to mention that I took this sentiment, I couldn't wait for a special occasion, from the Special Moments stamp set. This is also free during Saleabration. This one requires a $100 purchase, so it's available with a $100 purchase until February 28th or while supplies last. Okay, so we want to go ahead and put this down. Again, we want the paper to pull out in the direction of the notch, and we want it face down so that when we pull it out, our sentiment comes out in that direction, right? So let's get this straight. That's going to go there. I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool to peel that off. That it's close to the right edge, centered between the top and the bottom. Give it a good finger burnish there. And then we're going to tuck in our tab. Remember, you don't want this to stick to this. You want it inside of the pocket, and that's going to come down. Great. I'm going to check and make sure the slider's working. We're good there. And now I'm just going to bring in some embellishments to decorate the card. So this time I'm featuring a lot of Pool Party. Here I stamped the van on basic white and I colored it with my blends. This time I stamped the buggy on a sheet of designer series paper from Sunshine and Rainbows. It's got these cute little hearts. I don't know if you can see those, but I stamped directly on the paper. And then I re-stamped just the windows on some basic white, fussy cut them, and I layered them on top. For my wheels, because I already had this Pool Party paper and I needed to cover that, for my wheels I used this 1/2 inch circle punch. This is retired now. And I just cut it out of basic black to make the 2 tire wheels. And these little dots that I made for the hubcaps actually came from this die right here. This is the Sweet Conversations bundle. And I took the tag die, and when you cut out the tag, it cuts out a little hole in the tag. So I used that hole to make my little hubcaps. And that worked for me because I've made quite a few Valentine cards recently. Obviously, we're a week out from Valentine's Day, so making those tags was necessary anyway. But considering we have the tailored tags dies where we're using this, you could also get some circles. And in fact, I wonder, I should have tried that to see if this die would actually have made the perfect wheel. I'm going to try that. So let's go ahead and sort of gauge our placement. I'm going to layer some pieces. Again, this comes from the Sunshine and Rainbow DSP. Layer some pieces, kind of what I want it to look like. I think this is going to need to come down considerably. So I used this paper from the Sunshine and Rainbows paper, and I punched myself out a sun. I just used an old retired one of the roughly circle punches. You could also do it with the 1-inch circle punch. I did that on a different one of the cards. I think this one I used circle punch. So just found a clever way to get myself a sun. All right, now that we have an idea what we're going to do for our little scene, we're just going to go ahead and glue these down. To go kind of right up against the road this time, just because I want to leave myself plenty of room for that sentiment label at the top. The tailored tags punch and the double oval punch. Combine these two together to make my own custom label. And I used the Granny Apple Green ink to stamp the sentiment. I'm going to bring in these Artistry Blooms adhesive back sequins, and there is a Mango Melody sequin in this pack, or a whole sheet of them, in fact. I'm going to bring one of those in to accent on my sun. A little bit of sparkle. I've got some Wink of Stella here on the glass of my car windows. Probably can't see that on camera, but there's some Wink of Stella there to make that look like glass. And I'm going to use another 5-inch piece of ribbon. This is Pool Party sheer ribbon. This is current in the catalog. And I'm going to use that to create my handle. And there we go. We have a sample that the car drives to the left, and we have a sample with the car driving to the right. So stinking cute, I can't stand it. So let's bring in our other samples that we had here at the beginning. So we've got an assortment of vans and a convertible and a couple of buggies. I've stamped on the paper, I've colored them with my blends. We've used an assortment of background papers, including the New Horizons DSP, the Sunshine and Rainbows DSP, and this is Penguin Playmates DSP. So many adorable options for these cards. This one could be used for anything. Relax and enjoy your day. It could be a birthday or anything. This one is driving by just to say hi. It's friendship. This one is a happy birthday. This one, I couldn't wait for a special occasion. You can use that any day. And this one, it's birthday time, and I took that from the Awesome Otters stamp set, also free during Saleabration. So lots of fun ideas for these slider cards. I hope you've enjoyed learning how to make horizontal slider cards that either go to the right or to the left. And I hope you'll join me for part 2 when I show you vertical cards as well as a whole assortment of horizontal cards using other stamp sets. We won't make more horizontal cards, but I'll show you a bunch of other samples to get your creative juices flowing. Thanks again for joining me. Leave me a comment down below and let me know which is your favorite. Number 1, the purple van. This is Fresh Freesia, by the way. Number 2, the love bug. Number 3, the brown van in the mountain scene. Number 4, Just Jade going through the winter snowstorm. Or number 5, our yellow Corvette. Would love to hear which one is your favorite. Also, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please, please, please be sure that you subscribe by clicking on the red word subscribe, and make sure you click the notifications bell so that you're notified when the part 2 video is posted. And I'll be back with you very, very soon with the next installment of slider cards. I'll be making a really cute slider card with the Seize the Day stamp set. As always, if you don't have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator. Please look down in the information below for a link to my online store, and I'd be more than happy to get you any of these products, including the great Saleabration items. Don't forget, they end February 28th or while supplies last. Thanks. Until the next time. Bye.